It's crazy how some people need no proof to believe a lie, but demand endless proof that they refuse just to pretend they accept the truth. This is how we got this, and it's everyone's business. Reefer Madness, public enemy number one. Well, that was a psyop. COVID, public enemy number one. That's a psyop. They take that classification pretty seriously. And, if anybody can actually find out when marijuana or cannabis was actually, labeled as public enemy number one, then by all means, let me know who, was it Nixon? Like, I've been looking for this bit of information, and I can't actually find where it was officially done, because maybe it was never actually officially public enemy number one. But the propaganda, the way they perpetuated it, they made everybody believe that. And I still kind of believe that it is, but I can't find anything against that or for that. So, interestingly enough, think about it. The keywords and legal fact is cannabis freedoms. Prohibition and legalization are psyops, psychological operations. Look at all the, the videos, the movies they put out, the media, the entertainment, to get, basically brainwash people. It was a habitual brainwashing, a generational habitual brainwashing that went on and on and on and on. Everybody knows about this stuff, but nobody's really addressing it for what it is. I mean, some people are, but what do we got for legalization? Isn't it the same thing? Isn't it the exact same thing? People they're making a lot of money off of both. I mean, compare the two. Compare prohibition with legalization. How are they really different? How is it different? Is it different? I mean, not really. It's still prohibitive legalization. It's still prohibited. It's still, yeah. Be a free thinker and don't accept everything you hear as truth. Be critical and evaluate what you believe in. Just because the government says marijuana bad because marijuana bad, except for, it's hemp for victory. So now, it's good. It's good for us, bad for you. Good for the goose and bad for the gander or whatever. And that's the epitome of hypocrisy. So, do you know what inequality and injustice looks like? Uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. It is the law. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone is the law. This, what we have here is a disparity. It's a schism. There's no, why should people in some states have more rights than people in other states? That's not how that works, according to the Constitution, which was drafted on hemp paper. It's possible it was finalized on hemp paper as well, but we know it was drafted on hemp paper. It may have actually been finalized on other paper, but it's an integral part of the founding of this country, and there's no doubt about that. If you don't like cannabis, just ignore it like you do with all other human rights and injustices. Equal cannabis freedoms for all. Marijuana prohibition of cannabis. Marijuana legalization of cannabis. Equal cannabis freedoms for all. Those who know the history are liberated by it, and this is not in like a liberal sense. This is, by definition, it's your liberation, freedom. You're freed by it. Before, before, and then during. We're kind of in the middle here, and in some words, there's still marijuana prohibition of cannabis. There's still marijuana legalization of cannabis, and even some places have a semblance of cannabis freedoms, but it's not for everyone. And why? Why is anyone the exception? Why? Nobody can answer that. Nobody can honestly answer that question. The Chinese symbol for cannabis plant is ma. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. It's the oldest recorded name for the plant, being used since 2700 BC. The symbol represents two cannabis plants hanging upside down on a drying rack. I did not put this one together, but you know what? It's almost 3,000 years ago, and it's within written language, but it predates written language. It's a fundamental human right. It's been invoked by people. Some of the worst, nastiest, pop that I've ever got was from the dispensary. This rotten, moldy, rotten weed. So just home, grow for yourself at home. Honestly, that's what's natural. That's what's right. Supporting your abuser is what do they call that? What is that called? Falling in love with your captor or whatever. That's a thing. I mean, pause it. Take the exam. See how you do. This is the entrance exam. Pause it. Read it. Take it. if you actually understand the reality, and or if you are living in a fantasy, because it's either one or the other. Ignorance is no excuse. So it's not prohibited, not prohibition, not legalized, not legalization. It's not medical. No, I'm sorry, it's not medical. It's not recreational either. It's cannabis freedoms, guys. That's what it is. Just say grow. Just say grow. Just grow cannabis. 1907, Eli Lilly published his doctoral thesis on cannabis. It's been over 100 years. If you think more research needs to be done on marijuana, do your research on cannabis first. It's a real thing. The kind of the point of this videos and part of what I do is to save people a decade of research, so they don't have to have their go through what I've been through. So tell me again why you think government can be trusted to legalize and tax marijuana. Do you remember the Marijuana Tax Stamp Act of 1937? Do you remember the last 165 plus years of marijuana prohibition, the police state, the over-incarceration, for-profit prison system, like the long list of problems that come out, the war on drugs? You remember all that? Yeah. How much can you really trust, the government with it? This much or less. The amount of marijuana, GovCorp, the corporatized government, is capable of managing responsibly. Much less than this, guys. This is unacceptable. They do not have the authority to be in control of that much. So know your history. Cannabis was one of the first agriculturally produced ancient. I didn't write this one. First agriculturally persist. Yeah, I'm so tired, guys. This war has been rough. Archaeologists have uncovered hemp fibers, artifacts dating all the way back to the Stone Ages in Asia. Yeah, okay. Well, that's, back to, where was it? Anyway. It predates written language is what it is, and this isn't necessarily the one, but it does. It predates written language. It's a human right that predates written language. It's self-evident. Pause it. I'm not going to read it all, but it's relevant and it's pertinent. It's poignant, and please, this one I could modify a bit. Belief in blind authority is the greatest enemy of truth. It's the focus on the pharmaceuticals. Don't focus on your freedoms at all. No. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. If anybody asks, tell them the definition of shall not be infringed is shall not be infringed, which, it's funny, but you can't really use the definition of something in the word of what you're trying, what you're trying to define in the definition. That's not how it works. But shall not be infringed. Honestly, shall is not. It's not there's no option about that. It's a must. Shall is not maybe. It's a must. Yeah, this guy. Anyway, pause it if you want. A spiral of injustice. Behavioral studies. And given an environment, how do people behave? Towards this, based upon their knowledge or their ignorance, either are they condescending, you just, I won't even go into it all, but, it starts off, somewhat benign, I suppose, just bad language, insults or whatever, and then they have avoidance and discrimination and violence, and then they'll eliminate you, Pause it if you want. It's good information, and this is the totalitarian tiptoe, the Hegelian dialectic, the way things are, not the way things should be. From 1850 to 1936, cannabis was used as the primary medicine for more than 100 separate illnesses or diseases in the United States. So yeah, cannabis extract. Here's what I'm getting at. The history. What does this say on the bottle? Is this marijuana extract? Do we have endo-marijuana systems? Or do we have, endocannabinoid systems? And so no, the marijuana prohibition is fraudulent. Marijuana legalization is fraudulent. And even if they, the states that have changed the name back to cannabis, it's still fraudulent behavior. Just because they're renaming it properly doesn't mean that they have the definition correct, and that doesn't mean that they're behaving responsibly towards it, because they haven't for the past 165 years. It's the longest, running civil war in the history of the United States. and the sixth longest still ongoing world war. You can look it up. So then this is when I made up the word, THC, but I won't get into that right now. I didn't share it, but the marijuana legalized, like, question that stuff, THC, and then the cannabis freedoms, like, what's the behavior, what's the outcome, what's the social programming, same thing. Prohibitive marijuana, prohibition, prohibitive legalization, what's the difference? It upsets people. It's a violation of freedoms. So equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. I mean, we'll be happier that way. That's the reality. And everybody else who's living in a fantasy needs to wake up for a lot of reasons. And, so what can you control? What can't you control? What's within your realm and what isn't? What can you stand up for? And this Meth Lake, Idaho, is a horrible place. It just genuinely is, and they I won't get into it right now. It really bothers me. So cannabis is safer than Meth Lake, Idaho. Meth head police sanctioned suicide celebrations. That's what they do up there, guys. Where meth strong police self-approved. I don't know. I wasn't getting into this, but it's a real thing. They made the largest meth sign. There it is, the largest meth sign in the entire planet, advertising how much meth they have up there as a public outcry. And they're doing this same thing. Make your petition to a candid world. So they've made their petition about meth to a candid world. But it's not only that. It's the world's largest meth advertisement. And I know why. And I basically played a major role in preventing the perpetuation of this, and I was tortured and disenfranchised permanently for the rest of my life because of this. I've been severely injured because I've been the one, for so many years pointing out the blatant corruption and up there, and because I was pointing it out, and they made an example of me, and they murdered my friends, and I'm sick of my friends getting murdered. So cannabis has no lethal dosage. Water's lethal dosage, times 50 exceeds 900 or 90,000 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. Drinking 6 liters in 3 hours has caused human deaths, but that's water. Cannabis has no lethal dosage. It's not. You can't. If you died from eating it, you'd be dying because of the amount of water that's in it. Is probably what it is. There's nothing less harmful to the human body than cannabis, and that means it's the healthiest thing. Generally speaking, here's the poison scale for the lethal dosages. Water's on here. It's at the very top of this one. I mean, do it what you will. Equal cannabis freedoms. It's the law. Cannabis is safer than United States government marijuana, perjury, propaganda, subsequent 165 years, war crimes and slavery, dependent economy waged against innocent civilians and peaceful people around the world. Compare these two documents. Compare the report of the Indian Hemp Drug Company 1893 to 1894, and then compare the marijuana report of the Indian Hemp Drug Company 1893 to 1895. They are not the same documents. This one was just a kind of a scientific medical report. A little biased and had some problems, but this one was the law book in the United States. This one was Great Britain about in India and how they basically had to justify subjugating India. This one basically is how the United States enslaved its entire citizenry and forced this war on the rest of the world. This is, as far as I can tell, the where it began. Anslinger, but it's hard to say. So this happened first, and then Anslinger's testimony to Congress, and then this came out like a year or two later. This was the law book. All the research, the moral depravity and the insanity, all this stuff that this is the source. This is where it came from, and you got to compare the two. You have to compare the two for yourself. I can't sit here and tell you everything about all the differences between, but yeah, that introduction and glossary, those are different. And they really went through that. John Kraplin, he really went through that whole thing. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. It's the law. Cannabis is safer than U.S. government marijuana, perjury, propaganda, subsequent 165 years, war crimes and slavery, dependent economy waged against innocent citizens, civilians, and peaceful people around the world. I mean, consider the incarceration rate in America and the dates in the war on drugs. Nixon's enslavement, and then Bill Clinton came in and the escalation, the for-profit revolving prison system door, and you think you're in a free country. Only if you know better. Only if you know better. If you're ignorant, if you don't know your freedoms, you don't have them. Think about it. Think about this. I'm serious. Factor in these timelines. Figure out when all this stuff came down. And I'm trying to do my best to teach it, but unfortunately, I'm in a very compromised situation myself, and I have been most of my entire life. So if I can do it, anybody else can. The religious freedoms. There's no shortage of people trying to argue religious freedoms for cannabis, and that's perfectly appropriate and fine. But we can do a lot better than that. It's a basic fundamental human right that's been reserved since before written language. So yeah, cannabis religious freedoms. I mean that's great. Keep it up. But there's a lot more to it than that. A lot more to it than that. Even though there's plenty to know about it, I suppose, at least in Christianity. And I mean, what do we got going on here? These ancient pictures from these old churches, and it's a thing. It's real. It's real, guys. So we're not. We don't make things up. You just can't make this stuff up. Like, to all the cannabis activists and advocates on the planet, I commend you for your actions, your better knowledge and wisdom. So yeah, I mean, seriously, look, find this on the internet. It's free and available. And because I'm reporting on it, someday they might remove the entire thing, and maybe I should download the entire thing. But maybe you should also, download this entire, the one by John Kaplan, and then compare it with the original. And the original is like 9 volumes. It has 9 volumes, but this, the American Law Book, it's just the first volume. It's a perjured copy of the original, first volume British report. Not the same documents, guys. These had completely different functions in different places in the world. Just because they're very, seemingly very similar, don't be deceived. This is how they really kicked it off. Anslinger kind of started it, but I mean, pause it and read it. If we'd got decades ago, I calculated, what was it, 15 years ago or something, 10 years ago, that we could have paid off the national debt if every state would just behave as though Colorado or Oregon or California. I mean, in the respect that they're taxing it and whatever, we could pay off the national debt in, what was it, 3 years or something. But that's not really the case anymore, and there's a lot of other geopolitical, global, financial situations happening, and as Jack Herrera said, I'm not sure if cannabis is going to save the world, but it's the only thing that can. At some point, the ship sails. At some point, it's too late, and there is no going back. And have we? Do you believe we've reached the point of no return? I believe it's still possible to end this war, but I'm not sure how much time we have left, if any. We may have passed that opportunity might be gone. Pause it, read it. Just pause it and read it. Like, think about it. Think about what does this mean? The most important agricultural product on the planet. The last I checked, 5th highest grossing agricultural product in the United States. This is one of the most important things we have, if not the most important thing we have. And there's no debating that. There's nothing contrary other than ignorance and greed, blatant willful ignorance, perjury, and greed, and ignorance is no excuse. So the rules are simple. They lied to us. We know they're lying to us. We know they're lying to us, but they keep lying to us, and we keep pretending to believe them. Don't believe them. Don't believe the lies. We've outgrown the lies about pot. We don't pander to or pay for tyrannical plots, government abuses, criminal fraud. We plant, grow, harvest, keep, and use what we've got. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. He who does not desire power is fit to hold it. And yeah, I don't want to be the one in the position that I'm in. To be honest, I don't want to have to be doing what I'm doing. I don't have any other choice, though. Regulation. Verb, to trick people into choosing regulation in place of freedom by using the word legalization. And I did not make this, but I think people learned this from me. I've been teaching this thought process, this proper line of thinking and critical thinking and examination for a decade now. I didn't see anything like this a decade ago. Nobody was putting things out like that, but I can appreciate this, and I'm not sure where I got that from, but I do believe that they kind of got it from me. You need power only when you were going to do something harmful. Otherwise, love is enough to get everything else done. Why? Why? Give me a reason. Why does the government need power over this? There isn't. There isn't any. A law which is repugnant and void of the Constitution is null and void. Marbury versus Madison. Think about it. It's constitutionally void. It's repugnant to the Constitution. Prohibition and legalization are constitutionally republic. It's undeniable. So what prohibition looks like and what legalization looks like, the only valid law, equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. Legalized ignorance is no excuse. I mean, do you know what cannabis freedoms look like? Like, does she look like she's kind of exercising cannabis freedoms? I mean, under whatever context it is. I mean, she's obviously not in a prison cell, right? She's not locked up for non-victim, non-violent, no victim, innocent, nonsensical crimes that are not crimes. They're not really crimes. So here we have marijuana prohibition. It's a handicapped, at the bottom of a stairwell. The marijuana legalization. It's the same thing. You're trying to get a handicapped person, people who need something, but it's just out of reach. I mean, here it's like marijuana tax stamp act. Oh yeah, we'll give you a license to do it if you bring it in, and then you get arrested for it. Like, you might as well just standing at the top of this. You're sitting in your wheelchair at the top of the stairs. No, we'll help you down, and they just push you, and then you flip end over end and snap your neck on the door on your way down. Like that's both of them, guys. That's prohibition and legalization. It's the same treatment. Just because some people think they're an exception now, some people think they're exceptional, when the reality is that nobody's an exception. We all have the same freedoms. Like, why? Same thing. It's what's marijuana prohibition? It's a staircase going nowhere. It's a staircase that goes nowhere at all, and then people can just climb this marijuana prohibition ladder and then jump off the top when they get there. Or get shoved off the top when they get, ignorance is no. What's legalization? Well, it's basically saying it's a ladder that, it pretend, it's against the side of a building. Now, at least there's a structure, or at least we got some type of structure going on. But who has access, through the same, portal, the employees that go in at the bottom door down there or whatever, and everybody else, you gotta climb up at the top, and then you just gotta walk right into a wall, and you get shoved in the wall by everybody behind you, and you're just trying to get in when there's no way in. Legalized ignorance is no excuse. Ignorance is no excuse. Legalized ignorance is no excuse. The current valid law, equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. There's no exception, and there's plenty of laws to support. There's plenty of laws to support it that don't directly say that, but indirectly, yes, that's what it equates to. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone without exception. That is the law. You spend a decade doing nothing else with your life other than trying to figure out why your entire life was destroyed permanently for the rest of your life because you sold 3.5 grams of cannabis in the state of Idaho, and they were all calling it marijuana at the time. I mean, you don't want to be in my situation. You don't want to be in my position. You don't want to have the motivation to actually learn what I've had to do, to out of protection for myself and survival. Like, so, we need to legalize marijuana everywhere. No, that's not that's wrong. That's the wrong answer. Legalization is poisonous fruit from the prohibition tree. The marijuana prohibition propaganda perjury tree. Cannabis is lawfully. Just say no mens rea to pot charges. What's mens rea? That's 1/10 of criminal law. Guilty mind. Everybody knows what 9/10 of criminal law. Possession is. Well, okay, the government held on to exclusive possession of the cannabis plant under false pretenses and definitions and terminology for the past 165 years. That's possession. So did they have lawful possession of cannabis for the past 165 years? No, they didn't. So that fulfills 9/10 of criminal law. Well, did they feel bad about it? Did they express, did anybody in the government ever express, what they knew what they were doing was wrong? Well, what about the Nixon advisor? Look up on Nixon's advisor, and he says that they knew what they were doing was wrong, and then there's another lady, I can't even remember, but she basically stated that. Marijuana is our cash cow. We will never give it up. Like, the government is addicted to the money generating revenue and the slavery that this bogus, these bogus codes and statutes have created. Have enforced this. It's like, this is the largest atrocity in our modern day. Would any cannabis attorney like to end the sixth longest, and anybody, you don't even have to be an attorney. Anybody want to help me end a war? Like, anybody else want to help me end a war? Like, seriously. Would any cannabis attorney or any person on this planet really like to end the sixth longest world war in human history? It's also the longest civil war in the history of the United States, and so far as I'm aware, the last official war that was approved and ratified by Congress. Very real, very serious war, as I'm sure such attorneys understand. They don't. I understand this, but I mean, or they're not doing it. Like, honestly, this should not be hard. Somebody by now, after 165 years, somebody in the bar attorney, if they were honest and for the people, this would have been settled in the Supreme Court. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous that the most disenfranchised, most injured person on this, in this war, or not just me, but it's not just about me, but the most disenfranchised, most injured people in this war understand it the best, and they have the most motivation and the strongest arguments and reasons and reasoning why to do stuff, but they've been so disenfranchised they can't even go to the grocery store to get a gallon of milk or whatever. You can't even afford to put gas in the car that you're living in, despite that you're being constantly forced around to park in a different parking lot or go somewhere else. The fraudulent perjured marijuana war against cannabis. This is, you could help me set the record straight. Secure cannabis freedoms for everyone, and would certainly be substantial, monetary incentives to end the war of the process. Like, I have a case that there's, any attorney wanted to help me with this, like, you will never have to do any other law work or any other work for the rest of your life if you can settle this case for me. And I have all the evidence. I have, there's two different cases that I've got, what happened to me in Idaho in 2015, and this 165-year-long war that's been going on in the United States of America, and it's forced on the rest of the world. Like, honestly, you want to help end a war? You really represent the people, or do I do that? Do I actually do that job better? So several attorneys follow me through my various social networks. They've agreed with me on, valid arguments, and then based on the historical research and personal experiences that I've had and research that I've spent, a decade to learn and understand, which nobody else was informed enough to teach me. This is why I'm teaching the class. I learned as much as I could from everybody who did know, better than I did at the time, and then I got to a point where nobody could teach me anything else, and so I did. I went and learned more, and I'm the one teaching. So also due to uniquely unprecedented, very personal, extenuating, and permanent personal legal circumstances. This is the opportunity that I can provide. Take it or leave it. Either way, I'm grateful to have many attorneys following me and following my lead. More and more as time goes on, please let me know if you are interested in having the willingness, the ability, and to develop the knowledge to discuss with me further. Thank you. You wouldn't believe what I've been through, and some people would, but you it's only the people who've gone through similar or worse. But then not everybody gets away. Like and I did. I towed their line. I did everything, I said whatever, I did the monkey dance, I gave them my money, and to some extent, it's like, it shouldn't have been, like, locked up and tortured, have my competency questioned by people who should already know better, who should be representing the rights and interests of the people, but don't. They do the opposite. They enslave people. My life's been ruined, guys. And why? Because I know better. Prohibition cannot be enforced for the simple reason that the majority of the American people do not want it enforced and are resisting its enforcement. That being so, the orderly thing to do under our form of government is to abolish a law which cannot be enforced, a law which the people of the country do not want enforced. Fiorello LaGuardia, 1882 to 1947, he was the mayor of New York. And you know what? People today say the same thing about legalization, and I'm one of them. Like, think about what that means. Back it up, play that again. Like, listen to it. If you don't want to read it for comprehension yourself, you can listen to it and maybe understand it better. Like, the people learn differently. So read it, pause it, listen, whatever. Just go through it. Learn this. I have it memorized. If you don't know what this means, the historical context and what this means, they knew back then. Fiorello LaGuardia knew, and they ignored the committee, the LaGuardia committee, the commission. They ignored the entire report in favor of Anslinger's perjury and propaganda. They knew how the law worked back then, and we know how it works now. There's the letter of the law, the spirit of the law, and then the actual practice of the law, and they are not the same. They are not the same, but they should be, shouldn't they? Isn't that how law's supposed to work? It is. So no, we don't prohibit this. We also don't legalize this. That's not how it works. Everyone who's advocating for legalization is being misled intentionally because they're being led to the slaughter. So what did Anslinger say? So instead of actually paying attention to the truth, and Einstein, by the way, Albert Einstein was a personal, a close friend and unofficial to LaGuardia and an unofficial advisor to the LaGuardia Committee. Here it is, Harry Jacob Anslinger. This is an excerpt from his 1937 testimony to Congress. These two paragraphs were in this exact order, and there was nothing in between them, and nothing's being taken out of context. We have urged the states to revise their definitions so as to include all parts of the plant. It now seems, as though it didn't before, but it now seems that the seeds and the portions other than the dried flowering tops contain positively dangerous substances. Oh, is that so? Well, where's the evidence? Where's the proof other than there's, hearsay, willful perjury? This is the willful perjury. As a matter of fact, is it a fact? Was it a fact that the staminate leaves are about as harmless as a rattlesnake? No, that's a lie. That is a lie. And how many millions of people have been tortured and murdered and enslaved and had their entire lives and families ruined to benefit the people who support this lie. So in this act, it was necessary to make the definitions all inclusive. Okay. So they changed the terminology, they changed the definitions, and we don't change laws for light and transient purposes. And this was nefarious purposes. This was intentionally willful, nefarious purposes by this guy. He was an anandamide deficient psychopath. The amazing endocannabinoid system. Once cannabis is ingested, it's broken down into cannabinoid. I mean, pause it, read it like this, and I didn't make either. I did put this one together. They obviously most of the ones in here, I'm the one authored it. And so the reality is for the past decade, I've been behind the scenes. Giving people the accurate, proper information. I didn't put my name on everything, but I did. I put this together. I've spent decades setting the record straight in the minds, in the eyes of the public because they need to know better. So, uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone without exception. Cannabis freedoms look like this. This guy, and then legalization of marijuana looks like this. Legalized ignorance is no excuse. So it's still, you're going to legalize it. You're still going to get, shoved down to the ground and racial disparaged and disenfranchised and have your friends and family and maybe yourself murdered because, nobody knows better. You need to learn better and you need to teach better. When you know good, do good. When you know better, do better. Mother Teresa. Cannabis freedoms are safer than government perjured marijuana legalization. So, what do we got here? People in their backyard growing their own cannabis. And then what do we got here? A dispensary, a state-ran dispensary in Oregon being raided by the police. And, the police came in and mocked disabled people and they stole some product. And, just the criminals, thugs. Like, they came in and pointed guns at innocent people. Like, in a state-sanctioned, thing. Even, like, just... You think legalization is different? I'm telling you, it's not. It's not that different. It's really not. It's cannabis freedoms. The control oligarchs. Pause it. Pinch and zoom. Read it. Read all about it. I'm not going to do that right now. Just here it is. I put this together. And control oligarchs, guys. Don't you have control of your own life? Are you free? So what's safer than perjured? U.S. marijuana legalization, well, freedom, cannabis freedoms are safer than marijuana legalization. People who only know one Spanish word and use it regularly when they only speak English 100% of the time should think a lot more about not speaking Spanish when they don't understand it. Like if the only two words are taco and marijuana, you should probably learn the real, medical English legal name, which is cannabis. So marijuana Spanish medical legal name, cannabis English medical legal name. What's more destructive and criminal than felony perjury? Well, government felony perjury is significantly more destructive than criminal, felony perjury. And I'm not perjuring anything. Like they can't shut me down, and nobody for the past 5 years has been able to argue against what I'm teaching. And that says a lot. 1937, the United States, and so I put this one together, but here's another one. 1937, the United States government passed the law based entirely on lies, and yes, that's true. They completely altered the course of the world's 10,000-year relationship with the plant. They perjured the terminology and definitions now almost a century later. The lies have unraveled, and the people are demanding once again to have free, not legal. This is something I corrected from somebody else. They have free access to the world's most beneficial plant. Demand cannabis freedom today, not legalization. Don't demand legalization. This is ignorance. It said legal behind here, but that's not the case. That's not what it is. Whoever put this out is part of a psychological operation, or they are ignorant, and there's no excuse to be that way. You need to learn better. And so I correct other people's things because they don't know better. So the price good men pay for indifference and their ignorance is to be in public affairs and is to be ruled by evil men. So cannabis is safer than political silence. Think about it. Oh, and this is a throwback to cocaine Biden. Wouldn't it have been time to swat the White House, swat the shit out of the White House, just like every other household in the United States where cocaine is found and was found. Like, shouldn't they have? I mean, this isn't a real photo, but you get busted in and you have your entire life destroyed and your friends and family murdered because of pot, because of cannabis. And yet they didn't raid the White House. There was obviously investigations and a lot of talk about it, but they didn't really care. They didn't do So cannabis is safer than White House powder. It really is. Cannabis is safer than anandamide deficient dictators. I mean, these aren't necessarily about the current president. I don't have some political career or comedic career of making fun of whoever the current president is, and it's a disgrace that people make millions doing that. So cannabis is safer than the District of Columbia's financial circus. These get into it. Pause it. Read it. Pause it. Read it. I put this together. I mean, think about it. Federal Reserve Note, 1914. Remember cannabis freedoms? They kind of, at one point in time, people were all growing it all around everywhere anyway. It was on the back of the money. And at one point in time, the government demanded that every farmer grow it. Every farmer's growing cannabis. It was a mandate. So how does it go from cannabis is a government mandate to marijuana bad to hemp for freedom to marijuana bad to marijuana legalization? It's actually cannabis, and so now it's cannabis freedoms. It goes back to that one picture where if you know the history. If you don't, then you need to learn. Cannabis is safer than the Fitch ratings and AAA. 2008 we had the United States, we had a A+ rating, and then we were downgraded to AAA, and then 2023 we were went from AAA to AA+. The United States is not. I don't want to break anybody's heart here, but you need to learn. Cannabis is safer than yellow. Well, that was an American company. It doesn't exist anymore. It was shut down. Maybe it's been bankrupt, and maybe it'll get revamped. But this is the last I heard about it. Goodbye, yellow. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. No one should be in prison for weed. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham, Alabama. Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 1 of the United States Constitution. The will of the people. Before the rights and the will of the people before the state and the federal government. People come first. Think about that, and that's in the Constitution. Any right that's not reserved by the people is reserved by the state or the federal government, respectively. And I'm obviously not quoting it directly, and I don't have that entirely memorized. But people have their priorities misplaced. So this was saying, what year did you start smoking weed? Let's see who has been smoking the longest. As if it's a pissing contest. As if because you're older, it's a pissing contest. So age. Here's the thing, guys. Age is not a substitute for the legal history that somebody has never learned before. So, somebody said one time, I can smoke more weed than Willie Nelson. Get me in touch with him. I'm like, big deal, big deal. Can you end the war on cannabis? Can you end this fraudulent marijuana war on cannabis? Who cares if you actually are obviously one person on this planet, and think about how conceited this is. One person on this planet probably is the number one most consuming. They smoke the most cannabis. They use the most cannabis more than anybody else. Well, for one, what are they doing to the one individual, whoever it is? What's that one individual doing to improve it and provide the same opportunities for anybody else? Sometimes some people try, and sometimes, most people don't. So, who knows most about upholding cannabis freedoms? That's what's important. That's what's poignant. That's what's relevant. That's what's considerate, not self-absorbed, egotistical, narcissism. Honestly, do I? Cannabis freedoms can't be prohibited or legalized. They can't. Uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. You cannot prohibit cannabis freedoms. It will not work. Just like LaGuardia said, it cannot be done. And the same thing with legalization. It cannot be done. It is impossible. Cannabis freedoms can't be prohibited or legalized. Uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. For everyone. For everyone. The fact that government has repeatedly admitted to willfully perjuring and propagating I did put this one together. I haven't read it for a long time. Medical, legal. The fact that government has repeatedly admitted to willfully perjuring and propagating medical and legal terminology and definitions. Anslinger's testimony to Congress, the cannabis of cannabis to marijuana and to marijuana to cannabis to marijuana and to marijuana and cannabis and back again, like all these type flip-flopping back and forth. Not only is the admission of guilt in and of itself, admission of guilt, like they've openly admitted guilt about this. That's 1/10 of criminal law. That's mens rea. And so it fulfills, the government is, effectively guilty of felony crimes and war crimes against its own citizens. And according to 10/10 of criminal law, there's no other way around that. There's just not. And a tort is not good enough. That is unacceptable. So, pause it, read it. Like, I don't have the... When it's the government, maybe I'll try. Only admission of guilt in itself, but a bias and decidedly ignorant ideological subversion that is still being used to distract as many people as possible from the fact that cannabis freedoms are equal for everyone, independent of whatever name people use for this flowering herbal whole food. In practicality, every single culture and language anywhere in this world throughout every age of documented and erased time, it's not a surprise that everyone who could, can, or would, did, has, and will transport, cultivate, and consume and exchange cannabis freely. Cannabis freedoms can't be prohibited or legalized. So when it's the government boot on your throat, when it doesn't matter, does it matter if Republicans or Democrats lock people up for cannabis? They both do. As if there's a moral high ground. Like, it's a shame and it's a disgrace and it's a repulsive, disgusting, repugnant thing that we haven't had a president that's in the constitutional party. Think about that. We haven't. I don't know when the last time there was, if ever. Have we ever even had a president that from the constitutional party that represents the people, or is this the point where you can actually acknowledge that? No, the presidents that we've had, the Republicans and Democrats enslave you. They murder your friends and family and what the two wings of the same bird. Like, until we have a constitutionally party president, then no, it's a psychological operation. There's more people. Honestly, guys, more people have died in this war in the past 165 years than all the Jews killed in Nazi Germany death camps. So cannabis is certainly safer than whatever these are supposed to be. What is it? Fake money? Like, why does our money look like clown money? And that's what they do. Before a monetary collapse in a country, the money gets more colorful and it becomes worth a lot less. Think about it. Like, $5 used to actually be a lot. 5 cents used to actually be a lot, but now what's the depreciation? There's less than 1.5% worth of the dollar left. Like 1.5 pennies of purchasing power left in the dollar. Like and it's probably less than that. That's the positive. That's the positive reports that I'm hearing. So yeah, pause it, read it. John Kaplan, look into this guy. This is the only picture I could find of him, but I've read his book, and he's a criminal. They used to. No, I don't even want to get into it. So yeah, religious freedoms again, and then here's some more support for religious freedoms, but it goes beyond that. Why should some people have religious freedoms that other people can't have? You don't have to be the same. Not everybody needs to be a Rastafarian to have cannabis freedoms. That's hypocrisy. So think about it. So this has been on my page for a long time. The people have lawfully reserved, historically evident rights and are at liberty to grow, use, and exchange cannabis freely, unlicensed, untaxed, free production, consumption, and trade of cannabis. We have no greater investment available to us but to uphold the inherent rights of the people. You can quote me on that. Inspired and fully supported by the law that is effectively responsible for uniting the states, uniting the United States, the law that all the states are supposed to unanimously uphold without exception, or they're not part of the union in this regard, or whatever regard it is. Article 4, section, supreme law. It takes precedence over and supersedes, state law and federal law. This is constitutional law. So Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 1 of the United States, also known as the Committee Clause in the United States Constitution, Supreme Law of the United States, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities as citizens in the several states. So why should people in, California and Oregon and the majority of the states now, this Article 4, the Committee Clause is not a majority rights, majority rights, minority rule. I say majority rules, minority rights situation. It's not. Several is little more than a few being two or three or more, and it is the majority. We're like, what do we have? Like 80%, 85%, 90% of the states have some semblance. 99% of the states have some semblance of cannabis legalization. And a few of the states have some semblance of freedom. Like, it's not a majority rights situation, guys. You can't think that all laws in this country are majority rules, minority rights. That's not the situation. Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 1 is an exception. Think about it. Read it. Understand it. Read it for comprehension. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, 319 U.S. 105. No state shall convert a liberty into a license and charge a fee, therefore. Shuttlesworth v. the City of Birmingham, Alabama, 373 U.S. 262. If the state converts a right, liberty, or privilege into a privilege, the citizens can ignore the license and the fees and engage in the right with impunity. But they're not going to, the government, as far all the history I've done, they're not going to uphold your rights. They are solely in place to violate your rights, and that's all they do. Like they have all these laws, and they use these laws to protect themselves. But they don't protect the, if the other, if the average person doesn't know these laws, then they're used against them and they're not upheld for them. Your public pretender is not going to bring these up. They're not going to defend this. They're not going to defend you. They don't have the ability to. It's a conflict of interest to have a public pretender, public defender who wants to give you some type of plea deal to ruin the rest of your life. So also 10/10 of criminal law, as I've explained. This includes mens rea, guilty mind. In short, government has wrongfully and extensively had exclusive and reckless possession and control of the cannabis revenue from uncounted war crimes. Possession is 9/10. Therefore, there is no shortage of government openly displaying guilty mind when it is calling what it is calling, the government is calling the failed war on drugs, the failed marijuana war on cannabis, where marijuana is still heavily emphasized and classified as public enemy number one. Mens rea is 1/10. It fulfills 10/10 of criminal law. I mean, think about it. The majority of the citizens in this country, even at the height of prohibition, there was like 57% of people admitting to having using cannabis or having used cannabis at the height of this prohibition. More than 50%. And before the prohibition, it was 100%. 100% of people used cannabis in some form. I'm not saying they smoked it. I mean, honestly, it's a flowering herbal whole food before it should ever be considered to be an inhalant. And that's how they're marketing and advertising it as an inhalant product. If that's what you need it for, that's fine. But generally, that's not the case. That's one of the last resorts that people should even be trying to use it for, like a smoking product. The standing legal status of cannabis prohibition and prohibitive legalization is legally poisonous fruit from the marijuana prohibition terminology and subsequent fraudulent definitions of multiple perjury trees. Nothing is going to change the fact that cannabis is easily the most important agricultural product available for humanity and that it's easy to grow, whole food. However, as perjured and redefined countless times in the United States legal lexicon, cannabis is not marijuana and it never was. I'm not the one trying to be I'm not the one being the grammar Nazi here. I'm the one pointing out the grammar Nazi, okay? The grammar Nazis that have existed for the past 165 years. It takes an extreme, there was an extreme deception that took place and is still taking place. And so what it takes is an extreme, revelation, an extreme, epiphany, disclosure of information. So and this is what we do, independently and as a collective, we're setting the record straight. So I developed this. I came up, with the help of Google Books, G Books, the Google Name Viewer. So in U.S. law, so this isn't. You call it whatever you want. I really don't care. I call it pot, quite often. That's really or cannabis because that's most appropriate and applicable. But call it whatever you want. That's not the point. The point is what the government did with the terminology and definitions. What did they do with it? Well, look at it. Look at the English. What did they do in the United States English? What do they do in the Mexican Spanish? I mean, think about this. Why so look at the entire timeline, the entire history, and study this. This is the roadmap for anything you want to learn right here. And yeah, it's a little complicated. And I think I did send the easier ones. So, I mean, if you can't even read, be honest, I tried to learn Spanish for, a decade, and I'm still trying to learn some Spanish, but I'm not immersed. I don't have the immersion. I'm not constantly trying to speak Spanish on a daily basis, and so it hasn't really stuck, but I've tried, and I have a deep respect for all cultures and languages. I love the way, I love words, and I love, honest people. So because the United States legalized felony perjury, the J spelling isn't used in Spanish anymore. They don't even use it, and that's originally. So the United States usurped foreign vernacular and inserted it into U.S. law. They stole the name, one of the names from Mexico, from Spain, and now they don't even use their own word anymore because it was usurped, it was stolen. They use the H spelling, but that was usurped and stolen also. The second, I mean, think about that. Why are people in Mexico? They have three spellings of it. They have the H, the J, and those both came from the G. So marijuana, there's three Spanish spellings. And why is it that cannabis, the English word, is the second one on the list that they use? Because that was, and it's funny that the English one is, so cannabis is used the same in both countries, even though so the marijuana with a J spelling is used the most in the United States, the marijuana with H spelling is used the most in Mexico. Think about it, wrap your head around this, get a grasp for what really happened and when it happened. And look at this. Pay attention to what happened and when and why. And it's not the same. It's different. It's different in the United States. What they did, and whereas the blue line, being cannabis, was above everything else for the entire time before that. I mean, but it goes so far back that it was, you can't even, they didn't really document it, or how much it was used. And right here is an entire, what do they call it, post-dated historical reference. None of this right here is even true. They purged it clear back to here to make it, the red line popped up above right. Oh, so that's just, they retroactively dated that at some point. And so that now that's their justification to do this, right here. Instead of what's the overall, the real history. And so it's the totalitarian tiptoe, the dialectic, the usurpation of vernacular and terminology and definitions is you can't make this up. I'm not making honestly, anybody could do this research. I'm not telling anybody anything that they can't find out for themselves and verify without me having to do it for them. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. We didn't consent to have our freedoms and rights and liberties repugnantly prohibited or illegally revoked. So we certainly didn't consent to having our freedoms sold back to us, the people, and taxed and licensed with fees, especially after our freedoms, rights, and liberties have been repugnantly prohibited and illegally revoked. That's logic. This is a logical flow. There's no logical fallacy here. And I'm basically being, I get ridiculed by illogical, irrational, anandamide deficient people because they refuse to learn better. They refuse to understand. Prohibitive legalization is business as usual. Uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. Legalization of marijuana be like Prohibition 2.0. It's government business, smash, smash, smash. Our families, my friends, your friends, you and me. Does it matter to you? Do you know better? Do you know enough to actually have it matter? Do you realize how more important this one thing is, because it's gone on for so long, than most any other societal issue that they whatever the new fear fixation is that they want to force on people to distract them from the real subjects, the real topics that most people are being directly affected by. This is your cannabinoid deficient brain on marijuana prohibition of cannabis. I've already read the quote from Anslinger, but everything perjured to intentionally cause harm, no matter who is decidedly ignorant and in denial today, the truth remains, historically reserved, invoked, and affirmed equal cannabis freedoms for all humanity since before written language, all throughout history. Uphold equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. The U.S. has no business engaging in foreign wars after 1860. The war on drugs is the last official U.S. war. It's the longest civil war in the history of the United States and become the sixth longest world war in human history. Specifically, the marijuana war against cannabis, in fact, was the last war to be approved and ratified by Congress in 1937. It's official. It's ongoing. It's a very real war. It counts. It matters in the most violations of the U.S. Constitution, and more importantly, the will of the, in violation of the will of people. Very real, most deadly war. People want to get on their soapbox and think what they're talking about is more important than other things. Well, I hate to say it, but generally that's not the case. But I want to help the world and my fellow humanity as much as possible, and that's why I'm focusing on what's most important, and also, yes, has directly affected my life and most everybody else I know, every single other person I know. How can we not be focused on this? How can we not pay attention and be responsible with this information and the knowledge and the duty that we have? So be the one to break the news to everybody. Be that one person. If you think you're not alone, to be honest. World War III started before anyone alive today was born. No, it's not comparable to World War II. It surpasses World War II immensely in every aspect. Share this with someone that needs to wake up to reality. What business does the United States government have in fighting wars abroad when it is not capable and refuses to bring peace to its own citizens? No business at all, especially after launching its own domestic war around the entire planet. Don't live in delusions, fantasies, and generational ignorance, abuse, and denial. Equal liberties and justice for all. It's the law. Every state has united to uphold. Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 1 of the United States, the Committee Clause. It's the law that every state is united behind to uphold. It's the law that is effectively responsible for uniting the states. And if the states are not united, then they have seceded. And they haven't seceded, so they should be united. So they have to follow until a state officially secedes, and the federal government allows them good luck to do that. No, they're obligated to uphold the Constitution. So equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. It's the law. So here's an interesting tidbit too. U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 10, Paragraph 1, no state shall enter into a treaty, alliance, or confederation, grant letters of marque and reprisal, or coin money, permit bills of credit, make anything but gold and silver coin a tenure in payment of debts, pass any bill of attainder, expose facto law or law impairing the obligation of contracts or granting titles of nobility. I mean, when did we go off the gold standard, guys? Think about it. When it rains, it pours. Supplement your anandamide deficient endocannabinoid system with full spectrum cannabinoids. Whole food cannabis includes necessarily vital tetrahydrocannabinol. You can't exclude that. CBD is more or less a placebo, as far as I can tell from my own personal experience. And it's great. I mean, don't get me wrong, CBD is good, but it doesn't cure cancer, whereas cannabis, THC does. But you want the full spectrum anyway. Article 4, USA Constitution, Section 2, Paragraph 1, equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. The citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges. Not all, shall, all, not some, few, may be. It is, shall, all privileges and immunities of citizens in the several states. Small example of what cannabis freedoms look like. We got the guy sitting in the back of his porch. He's growing. He's got his. It's fine. And for legal and medical monopoly-minded criminals who continually willfully violate rights and liberties of the freedoms of the people. A small example of what cannabis freedoms look like: support equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. It's constitutional law, and ignorance is no excuse to subvert it. You have already been notified. And if you can't teach something in a simple way, then you don't understand it well enough. So here, I've simplified it just a bit. This is as simple as it gets, guys. Like, do your research. If you think more research needs to be done on marijuana, do your research on cannabis first. And this one's flipped. I guess the English is on the bottom and the Spanish is at the top. I mean, like I said, I've been at this for a decade, and so I've tried teaching these concepts from every single angle and every single way that I possibly can. But there's only so many ways you can try to explain the same thing. So this is a reverse from the other one. And there was a massive period of time in between making the two, and so I didn't realize the one was, I flipped for the top and the bottom. Marijuana is perjury in U.S. English legal lexicon. In the United States law, marijuana is perjury of terminology and definitions. It is usurped foreign vernacular from Spain and Mexico, and it was inserted into U.S. law as unfamiliar word, terminology and name that it's a word. It's not a name in English. It's a word. Whereas cannabis is the English name and it should be capitalized, but they lowercased cannabis and they capitalized marijuana. And they like some of these old laws and like documents, they're very confused. Like sometimes they're capitalizing cannabis, sometimes it's lowercase, sometimes they're capitalizing marijuana, sometimes it's lowercase, but mostly they capitalized marijuana and excluded cannabis entirely, so people wouldn't be informed about the true nature of the word. It took them an entire generation to remove this proper name and definition from the minds of the citizens. Think about that. We've been getting attacked every day for 165 years by our own government in this regard, and they know better. As an entity, as one singular entity, they know it knows better. I respect cannabis. I respect freedoms of preference to call it whatever we want, the people want. But felony perjury, government felony perjury is government felony. In U.S. law, marijuana is felony perjury. Cannabis is the English medical legal name. It always has been. And I put these together. I can't really read Spanish. This basically says that, a similar thing. It's probably a little bit different, probably a little bit more informed than the English version. Just despite the people enforcing the ignorant laws who actually can't read Spanish just as much as some of the ignorant people like myself being tortured and having their lives destroyed by these fraudulent laws. Legal versus lawful, they're not the same thing. Legal versus lawful, they're not the same thing. However much you deny the truth goes on existing. Knowledge is power, wisdom is, ignorance is wisdom. Ignorance is wisdom. That's the one he didn't include. Knowledge is power, freedom is slavery, and whatever else. And then ignorance is wisdom. Everybody thinks, everyone's ignorant calling it marijuana, thinks that they're wise and they know everything about it. When honestly, if I hear somebody call it marijuana and they don't speak Spanish, I know exactly how little they know. It's that blatantly obvious to me, and anybody who's been, studying my class, it's that obvious. Knowledge isn't free. You have to pay attention. It's the media, so perspective. What's the perspective? Who's the real bad guy? You may be made out to be the bad guy when really you're the victim. It happens. So I'm responsible for translating the phrase equal cannabis freedoms for everyone into about 150 different languages, 75 different, 100 languages, like whatever, like equal cannabis freedoms for everyone without exception. And it's share it around the world. Everybody knows. If you can read, anybody on the planet can read something in here. I mean, nearly. The price for good men pay is indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. Yeah, we've included. So cannabis is safer than mandatory vaccinations. Like, honestly, forced vaccinations, like the lethal injections, like euthanation or something. Like, cannabis is safer than that, guys. Cannabis is safer than railroads. Remember that? We're at war. This is not a joke. People are complacent and they think that somebody's coming to save them, and really they need to take responsibility for their own actions. Cannabis is safer than warmongering governments. It's just a fact. And the marijuana war on cannabis is from a warmongering government. So I love my country. I love the people. I'm ashamed of my government. Cannabis is safer than actual banking systems, and these are. It's true. Cannabis is safer than hack-built invasive malicious microchips. Like there's some hack-built, like look into this. This is a whole subject you should know. And I'm not talking about the personal trackers. There's hacked CPUs. Like, you could be using a phone right now that's sending all your personal information to the Chinese Communist Party. Like, because we've been sold out. Forced to be reunited with Great Britain and subject to the crown, and now they're selling us out to the. I mean, you think you're free, but cannabis is safer than fiat currency. And look into the history. Look into it for yourself. It's there. It's there. This is not some fiction. This affects everyone. Just different ratios of how that works. So, and why is it that the freest country in the world has the most slaves? I mean, maybe I just should say that again. The freest country in the world, the self-proclaimed, allegedly most freest country in the United States in the world, has the most incarcerated slaves. The most slaves over what? Nonviolent cannabis possession. That's the most of the people throughout the past 165 years have been put through this revolving for-profit prison system. Door in and out and in and out and in and out until it killed them. And, how many millions of dollars do judges have that they are not entitled to? How many generations of families have been created at the expense of destroying other people's families? Pause it. I put this together. There's one photo I could have done better. So, I mean, it's a bit of a comic, but there's truth in it. This is the actual true statement that he said. This is the actual true statement that Einstein said. The prestige of government has undoubtedly been lowered considerably by the prohibition law, and they're talking about cannabis prohibition. For nothing is more destructive, and they were referencing alcohol prohibition, but that had already ended at this point. So nothing is more destructive with respect of the government than the law of the land, than passing laws which cannot be enforced. It is an open secret. So it's open information that the dangerous increase in crime in this country is closely connected with it. Think about what he's saying. This takes a little bit longer to actually process than what he advised LaGuardia on, but they're saying the same thing. The law which cannot be enforced. He advised the LaGuardia law that cannot be enforced. Einstein, the smart. We can trust Einstein on theoretical physics and mathematics, but when it comes to when it comes to like prohibition and law, like no, we can't trust Einstein on that. And an entire committee of informed legal professionals. But Anslinger, who obviously perjured himself in Congress, that's what we've gone on. This is insanity. Like I'm to some extent disgusted with the behavior on this planet. I guess this is going to be an interesting video. I can't chop it. I was going to chop it, but this photo makes it so I can't. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a mess, guys. If I had a better facility, if I had better resources, then I wouldn't I'd be able to do a lot better job of teaching this. But as it is, as far as I can tell, I'm doing a better job of teaching this than anybody else, because I learned, I'm the one teaching things that nobody was able to teach me. So I mean, think about that. Maybe pay attention, whether you believe it or not. The prestige of government has undoubtedly been lowered considerably by the prohibition law. For nothing is more destructive of respect for the government and of the law than the land that. Of the land the passing which law. Oh my gosh, I wonder if I screwed this up when I pasted it in. It doesn't entirely make sense. I mean, but it does. It's good enough. I mean, you can verify this. You don't need to. Here it is again, translated into 150 different languages or 100 different languages, whatever it is. Share this. Somebody on the planet will read it. Everybody is. Think about this. How many people do you think are actually backing you up on what you want on this, in this movement, it's freedom, this freedom movement? Well, most people are, especially the ones who know better, the informed majority. The truth is still the truth, even if no one believes it. A lie is still a lie, even if everyone believes it. Pick one. On your market, set, go. Compare the two. You know, this is a simple teaching. I mean, how can it, I mean, compare that, the original 9-volume British bias report, published in 1894 versus the U.S. perjured first volume of the British report published in 1969. That's 75 years later after the fact. This one was published first, and then 75 years later, I mean, they had 75 years. They didn't take them. They didn't spend the entire time. But they had 75 years to really butcher this one, and they did. These are not the same things. These are not the same things, guys. They are fundamentally different in what they did, and what they perpetuated and caused to have happen. And it's illegal to destroy a crime scene. This was Bear Lake County Courthouse. This is a crime scene, and I knew exactly. This is the building that they ran me through. And after I got their criminal rapist attorneys, basically ran out of town. Finally, they destroyed this building. Whereas all they had to do was put an elevator in it, but they decided to. I mean, honestly, I paid for the new courthouse, so this is destruction of evidence. They destroyed a crime scene in which they destroyed my life. So this is more evidence in my personal case. Equal cannabis freedoms for everyone. Pause it, read it. Just pause it, just read it. I put this one together too, and it's the colorized version, the Parisian lady and her cat and her cannabis, taken in 1910. This was a black and white. Murdoch versus Pennsylvania, Shuttlesworth v. the City of Birmingham, Alabama. The people have lawfully reserved, historically evident rights and are at liberty to grow, use, and exchange cannabis freely, unlicensed, untaxed. Equal consumption and trade of cannabis. We have no better investment available to us but to uphold the inherent rights of the people. You think you have some better investment than that? You think you're better off exploiting other people for a freedom that you can enjoy, that in order for you to sell all your cannabis to everybody in the state, that you need to make sure that they don't have the freedom to do what you can do. That's you're a criminal. You are ashamed. Prohibitive legalization cannot be enforced for the simple reason Earth's people do not want legalization enforced. We are resisting legalization enforcement and demanding cannabis freedoms. That being so, the only thing to do under our form of government is to abolish these laws, which cannot be enforced. These laws which the people of the Earth do not want enforced. This is a global issue now. And yeah, you can quote me on that, but you'd be, better off maybe quoting LaGuardia. He actually got to be a mayor before, So legalize marijuana now. I mean, honestly, if you understood what this meant, legalize, I'm covering that. What does that mean? Well, that's a psyop. That's a psychological, marijuana. Well, that's perjured terminology. People are supporting, they're supporting, it's a crime. People are, it's the Hegelian dialectic. Oh, we took your freedoms away from you. Now we'll sell them back to you. But you have to beg for them. Legalize marijuana. No, it's cannabis freedoms. There's no legalized about it. It's prohibit marijuana. They might as well. They're walking around with a sign that basically reads prohibit marijuana, and they don't know better. Every single person in this parade has no clue what they're doing. They're mindless. They're mindless automatons because they've never learned better. Because nobody can teach them better. Because nobody knows. Because nobody alive today was alive 165 years ago. They're all dead now. So nobody has personal experience of what it was like to have cannabis freedoms before prohibition. Not really. So is that what you think? Or is that what they want you to think? U.S. Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, Paragraph 1, the citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of the citizens in several states. It's called cannabis freedoms, guys, not marijuana legalization. Same thing. Legalize marijuana now. It's a psychological operation. It's a psych movement. And these people think, they're going around spending all this money and all this effort and stuff just to beg for a basic fundamental human right and freedom. And I've been saying, oh, what are they going to do? Prohibit water next? Well, yeah, they are. They're working on that. They've changed the definition of, what water is, and it's not a human right anymore. So, I mean, how is that going to affect everybody? And this cannabis war is the main thing that started all this, the majority of this really pungent perjury all around, in the country. If they didn't... if they didn't, start this, marijuana war against cannabis, they wouldn't be having this, marijuana legalization. They wouldn't have done this, Republican #1 COVID. That like, there's a lot of things that the government. Oh, we got away with this for this long, and we did this. It's their playbook. Marijuana prohibition of cannabis is their playbook to how to enslave and subjugate the rest. For any other reason or no reason at all. This is what they're doing to the population. If nature is illegal, does that mean, doesn't that mean that freedom doesn't exist? So freedom doesn't exist if nature is illegal. If nature is illegal, freedom doesn't exist. Freedom doesn't exist if nature is illegal. There's no such thing as freedom if nature is illegal. You're not free if nature is illegal. So make America hemp again, like whatever. Okay, so the history of the prohibition of tomatoes is the closest available legal botanical analogous to the legal history of cannabis, except that it is impossible to overdose THC from cannabis, but it is possible to develop tomatine poison and overdose from too many tomatoes, and tomato fruit is still bought and sold and taxed as a vegetable. They may have recently fixed that. I did put this one together a couple years ago, and I think they have fixed this one finally and officially because, maybe, people like me are pointing that out, the hypocrisy. So there's no other thing to compare it to. Marijuana prohibition of cannabis, there's nothing else to compare it to other than the history of the prohibition of tomatoes, which, look into it. It's one of my books if you want to know. Yeah, Abraham Lincoln probably did use cannabis. It's we don't necessarily have anything 100% other than prohibition goes against the bounds and reason that is attempt to control a man's appetite, that legalization makes a crime of things that are not a crime. He did say that. Legalization makes a thing a crime that is not a crime. Like growing, using, selling, trading, producing cannabis is not a crime, and it never was. So, and then this was attributed to him as well, but this is the one. So this is the one we know he said, and this is the one we suspect that maybe he did, but it's kind of hard to verify this one for Lincoln. So the whole plant, nothing but the plant. The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. I put this one together in memory of Spencer Allen Boston. This guy was a hero. It's and this is quotes from him. It's very unfair, the marijuana law. And it's unfortunate he didn't even know better at the time, but he knew. And so people, here's the thing: I'm not being condescending to the people who are doing good. You're trying. You're trying the best you can with the words you have. Learn more words and you can do better. We the people deserve better. Spencer Allen Boston. And then you'll look it up. He's the guy who lit up a joint in the courtroom, and so we deserve better. We the people deserve better. So whether the better terminology, maybe the only Spanish word is marijuana, and that's ignorant in one hand, but people inherently understand what's right. This guy, even though he didn't know the proper terminology and definitions, he understood the truth, independent of whatever the terminology and definitions were, and he behaved accordingly. And this guy's a hero, and they basically ruined his life and forced him to be living on the road, and he died in a car wreck. Like I broke my neck 3 years ago. My neck was broken 3 years ago in a car wreck because I've been forced to live in a car for the past decade of my life, ever since 2015 when they violated every single one of my rights and threatened my life and murdered my friends and fiance, Caldwell. For the first guy, no, they didn't murder him directly either, but you're going to destroy somebody's life and take away their livelihood and put them on probation and slave camp and make him work, and eventually, it killed him. It put him in his grave early. It's not fair. His family and every single family, deserves reparations because of it. So you're drunk. Go back to 1860 before legalized marijuana perjury replaced U.S. cannabis policies. Go back to 1860, you're drunk. This is what U.S. marijuana legalization of U.S. marijuana legal perjury of cannabis looks like. No legitimate reason exists where every illegitimate excuse is still used to steal the maximum value from me and you. This is how we got this. And I was explaining this earlier. If we didn't have, come on now. If we didn't have this going down, if this never happened, if this was never, ignorantly justified, and then we wouldn't be having, so they're shutting this down. They can't bring in the slave money anymore. They can't run the revenue. So what are they moving to? Oh, we got to ban stoves and all this, like anything else. What can if we can't enslave the people over this, then what can we enslave and torture the people over? Because some people just get their jollies off on torturing people. They get paid to do it. Do you know what cannabis freedoms look like? Well, do you? Cannabis freedoms, ignorance is no excuse. Legalized ignorance is no excuse. Cannabis freedoms before, during, and after every fraudulent prohibitive legalization. Shouldn't have shared that last one. Give away my secret. He causeth the grass to grow for cattle and herb for the sea. Yeah, religious freedoms. Psalms 104:14. Not medical, not legalized, not recreational, not prohibitive. It's cannabis freedoms. Not medical, not legalized, not recreational, not prohibitive. It's cannabis freedoms, like it or not. I mean, hate it or love it. Like, this is the reality. If you can't accept the reality, then you're in denial and you're living in a fantasy and you're causing harm. You are the problem, unless you are the solution because you know better and you're not living in a fantasy. I put this one together, and I will raise up a plant of renown for them, and they shall no more be consumed with hunger in the land, and neither bear the shame of the heathen any more. Ezekiel 34:29. That's in KJV. How many people have used cannabis have been treated like a heathen? You're lost. You're lost. You're not going to be saved. You're going to hell. That's the devil's lettuce. Fulfillment of prophecy. Yeah, I would say so. You believe in that kind of thing, or foresight, or whatever it is, divination, or the foreknowledge, knowing something. Like I say, inherently knowing something, understanding something. How many people, raise your hand, if you've been persecuted and mocked and insulted and ridiculed, and been treated like more or less a heathen. Even if you are a heathen, be treated religious freedoms. Then if you want to be a heathen, then in the United States of America you have that right. But so you shouldn't be discriminated and treated for it. And it has nothing to do with hedonism and being hedonistic. Like it's not. This is a human right. Like I don't know. And so this is what I was saying earlier as well. It's like, so what are they marketing it as? What does it say down here? Intended use. What is the intended use on the bottle? It says inhaled product. That's not true. The intended use is a health food. So cannabis is first and foremost primarily a health food before it's ever considered an inhalant. Like this is shocking. Legalized marijuana businesses aren't being honest about this with themselves or anyone else. Or maybe they are. It's like ignorance is no excuse. They're committing a crime whether they know it or not. So it contains certainly unobstructable universal rights. Shall not be infringed means shall not be infringed. Market prices for affordable consumer cannabis goods will reflect this again. And I did I don't know if it's in here, but the 10 stages of genocide. This is the spiral, the downward spiral. Denial language, like the same kind of thing. Like, what do they do before they start just eliminating people? They definitely lie to you first and steal your money and enslave you first. So let's see what I was going to say about this one. Oh, the prices. So, and I don't think I shared it in here. I have so many of these that I put together, and so I did the price. Using Harry Jacob Anslinger's testimony to Congress, he was saying how much it costs, and how much it costs for 1 pound of this stuff or whatever. And so I'd given inflation. It was about 2 years ago I did this, but given inflation, maybe it's in here if we'll find it. But if not, then you can do the calculations for yourself. How much was 1 pound of cannabis worth in 1937, and then factor in inflation, and what should 1 pound of cannabis be worth now? Well, a hell of a lot less than it is than what they're charging. Excuse my language. I'm trying to keep this clean. Nobody should have to leave their state for medicine. Well, people, unfortunately, they leave their corporeal physicality in a casket because they as if like being a cannabis refugee, which is a valid term, has been recognized since 1997, and before that, like as if that isn't a good enough reason. People leave this planet in a casket, and their spirit goes somewhere else, their soul goes somewhere else because. They couldn't access, they wouldn't have safe. Honestly, the government would rather murder people because, they're decidedly ignorant. They did it themselves. This is what cannabis freedoms look like. I asked the person who made this picture for permission to do this, and they said, oh, yes. So, but I screwed it up. Like, this is a hard subject to do. So, I say como se marijuana freedom. Like, that's the Spanish. I didn't even use the right word in Spanish because this is like... I know better, but to keep it straight, because like nobody, how do you speak a language that's been or a sub language that's been entirely erased from history? Like it's hard to when you've been raised your entire life and just like everybody else has been lied to, but you're the one person who can actually attempt to articulate more clearly and coherently. And if people would and thank you for the people who pay attention to my lessons, because you'll be able to, and your kids and grandkids will be able to articulate this, and everybody who's watching this will be able to articulate this better than I can. But I'm pioneering, and a lot of people are. Cannabis has no added potential to produce THC than it ever has had. People knew how to grow and cultivate flower with the highest skill before the invention of written language. Zero research needs to be done to determine that peaceful people shouldn't be incarcerated over cannabis. And so this is the last standing argument. It's like I guess there's two of them. The main one is it causes moral depravity in all of its forms. And that's in modern context. That what they're saying is it causes psychosis. It causes schizophrenia. It's a psychoactive. It means so is going and listening to a comedian. So is like eating a hamburger. So is like eating a handful of almonds. Like they're all psychoactive. Anything that changes your psyche in any way. Eating a bowl of lettuce, eating an apple is psychoactive. To what extent? But the reality, and so what their argument is, it's not your grandparents' cannabis. It's a lot more concentrated. They've genetically altered it. They've hybridized it. It's a lot more concentrated and potent than it ever was, and it's not natural to have in that high of concentrations and potencies. Well, what do honeybees do? Honeybees don't have anandamide receptors. They don't metabolize THC, but they concentrate it in very high potencies naturally, and they always have, and that's part of what some people don't understand about what was in the Bible, like, oh, go eat your honeycomb. Well, there's certain passages and stuff. Well, I've eaten my honeycomb or whatever, and it wasn't just honey. Like the back east, in the Bible, there was cannabis and there was honeybees and there was high concentrations of THC all throughout human history. So it's unacceptable argument. It's a logical fallacy, and everything that I'm basically refuting. It's easily illogical. All these logical fallacies. There is high concentrations of THC in honey. That's natural. There, anybody who knew anything about gardening at all knew how to produce high quality THC flowers. Like it's not complicated. You just keep the males away from the females, and then you get potent colas, these massive flowers and buds and stuff. So support equal cannabis freedoms, not marijuana prohibition, not marijuana legalization, not cannabis prohibition, not cannabis legalization. Homegrown, universally beneficial herbal cannabis freedom, and not even medical, just herbal. Like some people think, calling it medical is going to justify its legalization. Like that's like people don't know how confused they are. They have no idea, because they can only use the words that they've been programmed. They only use the words that the government has given them, because they've taken all the other good words away, and they constantly are the newspeak, the constant change in the dialogue. So uphold equal cannabis liberties instead of prohibitive legalization. This has the power to cure cancer. You don't smoke cannabis to cure cancer. You use essential oils. It's a whole food before it's ever an inhalant. And they're advertising it as an inhalant. They're extorting you. They're extorting me. They're extorting everybody on this planet. And it's not a good situation if you understood what's coming. If this behavior continues to perpetuate as it has, it's gone on too long already. The mind of a slave asks, is it legal? Is it illegal? The mind of a free man asks, is it right? Is it wrong? Is it moral? Is it immoral? How do you behave? What's the environment? We have a right to this plant. Maybe I'm just going to start flipping through them. Pause it if you want. This is it's kind of a mess, but it's what I'm putting. If you ever feel useless, like remember, it took 20 years and $20 trillion for U.S. presidents to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. Well, as if that's a bigger issue than it took 165 years and uncounted trillions of dollars and 31 U.S. presidents to replace the term cannabis with the term cannabis. It's like as if 20 years and 4 presidents is a big deal compared to 165 years and now we're up to what, 33 presidents, I think, 33 presidents. We're on the 33rd presidency in this war. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Teach better than I can, if you can. I dare, double dog dare you. Double pot dare you. We want proper ganja, not propaganda. Yeah, and that's what I'm doing. Citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens. Apply that to marijuana, prohibition of cannabis, marijuana legalization, cannabis, and the war on drugs. What do you get? You guessed it. The fictional word with its fictional definitions, the perjury that is marijuana. Cannabis is not marijuana in law. It never was. In the United States law, it never was. Legal systems shouldn't be changing terminology and definitions and laws back in favor of cannabis. Have had no guilty mind about the marijuana prohibition terminology and definitions and laws that it originally enforced upon the people in the first place. If your doctor doesn't know anything about the endocannabinoid system, if your doctor can't spell anandamide, if your doctor thinks that THC causes neurological problems, if your English-speaking doctor talks to you about marijuana or marijuana but never talks to you about cannabis, then your doctor is not a real doctor. The entourage effect. If you can get a doctor that can actually understand this, then yeah, then maybe we can consider them a genuine, real, caring medical legal professional. This is what the government marijuana prohibition looks like. This is what government marijuana legalization looks like. We're gonna break it. We're gonna cut off their power. We're gonna cut off their access so they don't have any of it. Oh, okay. Oh, now we're gonna fix it. We're gonna fix the problem that we created for everyone. Honestly, some people do deserve to be in jail and prison, and in this war, and it's not the people who have been. So, minimally regulated, not licensed, not taxed, free cannabis production, consumption, and exchange is a human right. It always has been. It always will be. And a lot of people get really confused. They jump to conclusions without listening to me. A lot of people will assume what I'm teaching without understanding it, without actually paying attention and learning anything. They just assume that they jump to these wild conclusions about, and it's not helpful. You're not helping anybody if you're not learning, if you're not paying attention. If you can't explain this better than I can, then you're part of the problem. Yeah, you shouldn't have to justify it to anybody. Yeah, and this sounds like some of my rhetoric. People are picking up on my rhetoric. I've been at this for a decade, and I've seen the impact that I've had on the terminology and the verbiage and the way people are describing this problem now. And it's a lot different than it used to be. The drug war is waged specifically to disenfranchise and strip people of political power. Some of the people like myself. I'm a better public servant than anybody else in government in this regard. No, I'm not I'm not a public servant in an official paid capacity of any kind, but in the respect of this war, I'm a better public servant than any government official has been for the past 165 years, and that's a matter of fact. I know better. I know how to behave towards other people and towards the freedoms. Are you a good person? Cannabis litmus test. If simply looking at this picture makes you feel hungry or happy in the least, then you're a normal person and an informed person at that. And understanding it inherently. Cannabis is a good thing. If looking at this picture outrages you and makes you feel like you want to punish somebody, take someone's money by force, or call the police on them and lock them up, then you're ignorant and anandamide deficient, and you're also not a good person. So did you pass or fail? Are you a good person, or are you like an evil person? Why does Idaho have such a high suicide rate? North Korea at least kills its people after unjust, inhumane public torture displays are over. Idaho doesn't. Idaho, the worst environment ever. That's where I'm from, guys. I'm fighting harder than a lot of people. The U.S. Declaration of Independence mentions just one duty. After a long train of abuse and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. This is your duty. Is your government abusing you and your friends and family? Well, you have a duty. It's not a job, it's a duty. I'm doing my duty. Are you doing yours? Do you understand what your duty is? I sure hope so, and thank you for everybody who does. Religious freedoms. Jack Herrera. I don't want to give the United States government any money for taxes. I think, taxes or licenses. I think that they should go to jail. Yeah, I do too. They're criminals. They should be the ones going to jail and get, for getting you and me and 20 million people getting arrested. It's more than that now. I mean, I don't know where he calculated that number from, but I mean, it's more than 20. And, Jack's been gone for a while, and he was a good man. I was able to chat with Jack for a minute, and I'm friends with his son. Arrested for pot. It is the safest thing you can do in the universe, Jack Herrera. I mean, he was not happy about this. I'm also very upset. But, in order to accurately and widely share a message, it has to be civilized. And he's not wrong at all in any of that. But, he's a hero. There's no doubt about it. But he had a lot to learn still. And I think he was still calling it marijuana because he didn't delve into the actual, perjury of terminology and definitions and find any of that as I have. So I'm trying to pick up where he left off in a few things that he hasn't. And, I don't care if people, allege that they learned this stuff first and don't give me credit for it. I want the war to end. Just end the war. Steal, take all the information from me that I'm putting out that you possibly can and end this war. I dare you. Why are people still acting like marijuana will make you rape white women or murder your brother? So that's the question. Why are people still acting like COVID is a worry? Yeah. Yeah. Everyone takes public enemy one classification seriously. And so they perpetuate the brainwashing that I'm going to pause it and read it. Like, I'm really kind of struggling, guys. But hemp for the bees, and yeah, I changed it. It said, alternative pollen source. No, it's an original pollen source. That's a fundamental difference between, we're going to give them something to fill in the gaps when all the other flowers aren't flowering. Well, no. What it is that, 165 years ago, we, and in 1937, and again, when Clinton, and all these times, we tried eradicating their original main pollen source. It's not, you'll see this original photo and it'll say alternative pollen source or something like that, but I've improved it. It isn't the original pollen source, not some random possible stand-in. This is the original pollen source. It grows everywhere around the planet that anything can grow, and it produces more cellulose than bamboo per whatever, hectare, acre, whatever you want to grow than it is. Yeah, I mean, pause them and read them if you want. And this was older. They've updated it since, because I was pointing this out. I put this out, and they're like, people follow me. Like, government officials follow me and stuff. And I'm pointing out all the marijuana is the only thing on the controlled substance list, and they've updated it since then. But I have evidence right here. This was the controlled substance list where it was Schedule 1, and it was just marijuana, and that's all. And now they've included, like, last I saw it, I believe it's marijuana, and then in parentheses, and then. They had a description, and then cannabis was in lowercase in the description, and I may have that in here somewhere. I may not. I'm not sure. It's really hard to get it all together, especially in my situation, but I'm doing a better job than anybody else was able to teach me. So, I mean, pause the video. Here's another. I mean, just, cholera outbreaks. Look into it. Verify it for yourself. I mean, what does it take to, what did it take? What did it really take for India or Great Britain to subjugate India and enslave them and destroy their culture? Strip them from having their bong. Cannabis is still legal in our country. No, not if you understand the reality. Oh, well. I guess that's the video, guys. Thanks for watching.